it could continue towards this green box. This is only a couple of months out in July. And that seems to be the most probable path of Bitcoin by that point. If the markets are breaking and crashing between now and then, I mean, look, if the markets are going to break, they're a lot closer to the Fed pivoting right now than they would be otherwise. The beginning of next year, $60,000 seems like the most probable occurrence on Bitcoin. And that's really, really bullish in so much if that is happening and you're looking at Bitcoin putting in this nice, beautiful triangle to the upside. We've seen triangles to the downside on Bitcoin before after the massive bull markets, but we're not looking at a triangle, inverse triangle to the upside. And if that's happening coming into the 2024 halving, that's when we're seeing like the euro dollar futures market talking about the Fed pivoting to easing in 2024. That's what the market's currently pricing in. Now, listen, the market doesn't always get it right. It's probably sooner. It could be later. If that's happening, though, and it is sooner, I expect Bitcoin breaks out of this pattern sooner to the upside. This is like a stealth bull market. Right here is the place to be accumulating. Know and understand your risks, but that's where we are. Do I think the 4-year cycle is over? I mean, the question is, halfway to the next halving. The 2024 halving, I don't think is priced in, mostly regarding investors. I think that you will see a lot of front-running activity coming into the 2024 halving. It's a different question of whether or not, as far as the internal dynamics of Bitcoin network, whether or not it's priced in. That's a supply and demand issue. The miners' incentives continue to change, especially with the enormous growth of the U.S. miners who are not incentivized to sell Bitcoin and they continue to hold Bitcoin. And now there's still worldwide a certain amount of miners out there who need to actually sell Bitcoin to fund their operations, their cost of electricity. And yeah, that's going to have an effect on the market. So supply demand effects at work. But I think that mostly a lot of it's going to come from a lot of momentum shift sentiment, a lot of traders wanting to front run the coming 2024 halving. They have to be careful with something like that. What do I mean by that is if you get a lot of speculation happening, it's questionable whether or not this was front running taking place. I think it was. I didn't think we'd go that far, up to $14,000 within 4 months, 6 months. But that was a big move. And if we didn't have some type of crisis, I imagine, I gather that what we would have saw is something more like this coming into the halving. And then you had that big first euphoric wave, or people really need to be aware of when we should be coming out of this, coming into the 2024 halving, and which would look wildly different. Never before we've been always in the prior halvings, we've been about 50% off the all-time high. So if price is anywhere within this range, call it above, rough sketch numbers, but, above $40,000, this time is different. That would be much more bullish coming out of that into the 2024 halving. And I think you would have a lot of people front running who would actually sell. Yeah, like this, expecting this type of behavior, right? So they would be selling in this area, in this zone, and that is like way over our deviations. That would be a deviation higher. That would be like up in that zone. You could see that nice little touch over here. Again, a nice touch, and then again, a nice touch, and then again, a nice touch. In that zone, I would expect a lot of people to take profit, and it might look very good at the time. There's no question about that. It could be a good move as Bitcoin becomes, in that overvalued range. The next bull market might look different, wildly different from what we just experienced. We could see the top part of that range. It's possible we get even higher to the deviation all the way to this top zone over here. Now, it's been a while since we've been up there. It hasn't been up there since 2018. I thought it was getting there over here just this past fourth quarter in 2021. It didn't. December 4th, we had the breakdown below $53,000 that we knew something was wrong. And here we are right now in the lower quadrant. So if we're again on a bear market, will you consider the 4-year cycle still in play? So I didn't get to finish answering that question then. So here's the thing with the 4-year cycle is that right now we are looking at one of two things happening. We have to talk Fed policy, right? From the very beginning, the Fed runs the show, and Bitcoin is not yet immune. One day, perhaps it'll be such, the market will be so big, bigger than the credit markets, that these central bankers' policies don't really matter. Today it does. Right now the market is reacting that we're going to see something break down right away. It's almost as if they're calling, or the market wants to push the pivot from the Federal Reserve, from JPOW, so that it feels more comfortable. It's what happened in 2018. Let's go back and look at it over here. But in 2018, this is where the Fed had to pivot. And I feel like the markets want that to happen right now. And I feel like from the reaction that we're seeing today. And if we start seeing that breakdown that we all been watching and looking for, and then we start seeing some limit downs, then the market is really trying to call the Fed's bluff. The market believes that the Fed's going to bluff and pivot. We will see. That's what's happening. So how does that relate to the 4-year cycle? If that happens and the Fed pivots, Bitcoin's going to go boom, right? Let me just pull up a chart of Bitcoin from that 2018 area. I'll just tell you, that's where Bitcoin went from 32,000 to $14,000. So Bitcoin had like a 4x in that 6 months. If the Fed pivot, that's going to supersede any 4-year cycle. So is the 4-year cycle in play? It's in play so much as that there are some miners right now who have to sell Bitcoin to fund their operations. The amount of Bitcoin they're selling on the market will be halved. Now, the value in dollars should go up, though, as that Bitcoin becomes worth more money. And so much as that, I believe a lot of retail, a lot of hedge funds, a lot of participants will front run that 4-year cycle behavior. Now, it seems like today people try to front run as fast as possible. So when does that begin? So right now you have the tension of things start breaking down. Are people going to be front running? Is Bitcoin going to bottom first again, like it did back in March in 2020? The 4-year cycle is in play, but the macro overshadows it. If you're looking at what winds up being a crash event, and this is a mini crash, right? This is a correction, 24%, right? This is what the Nasdaq is currently down right now, 24%. And I don't think that after yesterday's meeting that Jerome Powell is going to, he's not looking to pivot. What he's looking to say is he believes that the economy can withstand. It's strong enough and there's enough liquidity out there that it could withstand the tightening. QT balance runoff to start just in June. If market stays within this box over here and going sideways, the Fed doesn't have to do anything and they'll begin that QT. If you remember, June, a little further out, was where I was worried about. It seems to be on the verge of, as we test the support, potentially happening now where we run into like a big bear market, beyond a correction. We will see if that happens and we have a breakdown and then we do have a pivot from the Fed. We expect that, the 4-year cycle is not going to be as important at that time. If the markets are going into the halving in 2024 and they continue to be at the lower end of this range, if the markets, let me just show you with this, right? If the markets actually continue to just kind of consolidate, go sideways with that slight move upwards over here, we're just like this into 2024, somewhere around the yellow line. At that point, any way you look at Bitcoin, it looks at this point to be so bullish. The downside risk, from the way I look at it, is to 28,000. If you're going below that, this time is different. Something's wrong. So from where we are right now, you're talking another 33% drop. Bitcoin already off roughly 40%. You could have another 40% drop. It's possible. That takes us towards the bottom of this range over here. And then we're talking in a matter of, call it January 2023, which is 8 months away. Is, if Bitcoin is consolidating towards the top of the range coming into the halving, I think that Bitcoin is going to have a really big move up if that's what's happening. It does. I think that my own personal belief is that Bitcoin will make new all-time highs before the 2024 halving. It doesn't take much for Bitcoin to do that. our expectation over here on the bottom end, the baseline on January 2023 is 58,000 Bitcoin, and Bitcoin trades usually higher than the baseline, not at it or below it. I mean, there are sometimes it does actually, and that's before a big move up where it does hug the baseline. If you ask me what is going to happen, that Bitcoin continues to hug this line and is trading right around that level come January 2023. It could be higher. I wouldn't be surprised for it to be higher. And people like, Jordan, you're hoping. What do you mean that you're hoping? Yeah, I'm hoping that the thesis works out and plays out, and that's how I manage my risk around it. No one understands. If you break $28,000, if you break that floor, then something's different. Prepare accordingly. What are you going to do? So let's take a look at this. This is really fun. This is really interesting. And we're looking at, 7.3 years. That's how long price has been starting over here in January 2015 to where we are today inside this channel. We've seen that this channel is going up at an angle of 107.17 year over year. And this like bright line over here, we call that like the mean line. Now, in this first area over here between this line, which price is normally trading above that line, it's very seldom, very rare trading below it. It spent 120 days roughly, below this line over here out of its 7.3 years of existence. Bitcoin's been running, so its prices normally has been above that line. And actually in this first zone over here, it spent the majority of its time in the lower band. It spent 4.5 years in this lower band. Now, above that band, it spent 1.5 years in this upper band. This is when Bitcoin is becoming, as far as we'll be valuing it, overbought or overvalued. Now, the thing is, it's lasted in this upper quadrant. And well, this is not including down over here. I started over here. It's debatable whether or not you wanted to go back 2 more years over here to January 2013. It would be the same 107.17 angle, but price was in a euphoric stage at that point. If I were to go ahead and include that as well in that area, you would see that instead of 1.4 years in the, look at this. Look at that spelling. I'm so sorry about that. Euphoric. So spent 1.4 years in the euphoric area. It would be a lot longer if we included this bull market over here during the hype phase. We're not doing that, right? I'm not including the hype phase right now. In this area over here, though, not including that, we're still talking about 1.5 years in this euphoric area. So at this point, again, similar like we were just talking about trading out of drawdowns in bear markets, in the equity markets, it's the reverse when price gets, call it, or overvalued. And our expectations would be that price would be, knowing that it spends the majority of the time in this quadrant over here, that in the coming, by the summer, that price should be somewhere within this range. I have it as a rough $51,000 to $41,000. And that's my expectations on what would happen next. When price does trade below, and right now the markets are potentially, as we talked about, on the verge of much lower price action, I don't know what that would look like. If price were to break where I have the potential floor or the model's floor over here at $28,000, at that point, this time is different. Something's different. I don't know how to relate that to an adoption standpoint.